So in the comments to our last video, someone pointed out they thought the orange handgun or flare or whatever we thought it was could be just a reflection from the Bank of America sign. So I started looking at the photo a little bit more, and it does look like there's some sort of a weird reflection just under the eye in the Bank of America sign, and that's what this photo is zooming in on at this time. So I'm open to the idea that that handgun looking thing could be just a weird reflection or glare. Crystal believes he's holding something, but that photo is not very detailed and we can't really say for sure. But either way, it doesn't really prove a conspiracy. If he's holding something orange or not, it doesn't really matter. Two of the officers that were slain in the massacre had wakes, and they were announced in the mainstream press, the Dallas News, I think, here. And the public was invited, so Crystal and I decided we're definitely going to go to that, because if we start seeing closed caskets, it's going to be very much like Sandy Hook. So we drove up to Plano yesterday. We did see squad cars all throughout the parking lot from all over the entire country. Amarillo, Las Vegas, we saw one from St. Louis. They were there from all over the entire country at both of these wakes. And we also saw the chief of police, David Brown. He was at both of these things. And we definitely saw dead bodies in the caskets at both wakes. So as we were leaving the second wake, I called David Weiss and ran our findings past him. He was open to the idea that potentially maybe these bodies we're seeing in the caskets were wax. And I will admit that as I'm walking up to both of those bodies, man, they look like wax. But at the same time, I have to admit that when I went to my grandpa's funeral, he didn't look real. There was something that kind of looked fake about him. So I have a feeling that that's normal for a funeral. When the mortician gets done doing what they do with all the makeup and all that stuff, the bodies don't look real anymore. They look kind of like fake or wax. But again, we're going down a rabbit hole that we have absolutely zero evidence to support. It's just an idea that these things are fake. So we definitely saw real tears and real grieving at both of these wakes yesterday. So if this thing was fake, it was definitely good enough to fool even the family and friends. So we have no evidence to support that at all. But because this narrative is coming from the same people that brought us Sandy Hook and Boston and Orlando and all the other bullshit hoaxes that I know for sure I was lied to on, I've got some red flags going on with this one. Now, in their defense, the official story, we don't have the fake crying of a Naira or a Christine Lanolin or a Jean Rosen. We don't have that fake sobbing and bullshit crying going on, and we don't have immediate family members and victims' family members stepping forward saying we need gun control. How dare they be allowed to have those weapons? We don't see that at all. Although we did see Obama waste absolutely zero time to call for gun control after this happened. So it could be, just as Mike Cannon loves to say, never let a good opportunity go to waste. Maybe that's all this is. But we have found some things that aren't making sense, and we think we need to continue to investigate, despite seeing what were clearly dead bodies in those caskets. When Crystal and I went down to the crime scene on Sunday, none of the cops would talk to us about it. They told us that they were prohibited from talking about the event. So when we came back yesterday, which was Tuesday the 12th, we found that pretty much all the cops were willing to talk about the scene. And one thing that we had been led to believe incorrectly was that the robot bomb that killed Micah Xavier Johnson was set off in this parking garage on the right. That's the orange building just above that squad car. That turned out to be untrue. We found out that the robot bomb went into the second story of the El Centro College building, and that's where it detonated and exploded and killed Micah Xavier Johnson. If we would have been listening to the press conference from David Brown the day after the shooting around 7:30, we would have realized that the robot bomb didn't go off in the parking garage, and it did go off on the second floor of the El Centro building. We're going to play that clip for you just in a second. One thing I will point out is this is almost a full day after the shooting took place, and David Brown says one of the suspects. I find that a little curious because I thought it was known that Micah had acted alone almost immediately.
Let me walk through the standoff that had occurred or that was occurring at El Centro on the second floor, the college there in downtown Dallas. We cornered one suspect and we tried to negotiate for several hours. Negotiations broke down. We had an exchange of gunfire with the suspect. We saw no other option but to use our bomb robot and place a device on its extension for it to detonate where the suspect was. Other options would have exposed our officers to grave danger.
So one thing Crystal and I have been talking about a lot this week is how would they get that robot up to Micah? It seems like if he was healthy enough to be attacking the Dallas police, he could have run away from the robot. They move really slow. They don't move fast. And more importantly, why don't we see, like a lot of, evidence of a big explosion up there on the second floor of El Centro building? Because all the way around, you don't see any broken windows on the second floor, except for right there by the trash dumpsters where allegedly he entered the building.
A robot and a pound of C4. This is what Dallas police used in an unprecedented move to save officers' lives. In the heat of battle, the Dallas police used the extraordinary tactic, likely a first in America, a robot with a bomb to kill a cop-killing sniper.
We knew through negotiation this was the suspect because he was asking us how many did he get. And he was telling us how many more he wanted to kill.
He had already killed 5 officers, wounded 7, and 2 civilians during a 45-minute gun battle.
Slow down! He's in the damn building right there! I don't know where he's at. He's in that building right here. He's shot from that building.
Chief Brown made the final call after a 2-hour negotiation. He told his SWAT team to come up with a creative plan that would keep officers out of the line of fire and take out the suspect.
They improvised this whole idea in about 15, 20 minutes. Extraordinary.
That plan involved this kind of robot secured with C4 explosive. So that right there is a pound of C4.
Yeah, this is 454 grams of C4.
We asked explosives expert Matt Barnett to show us how this might have worked in the scenario detailed by the chief. First, officers had to maneuver the robot to the second floor. This is a similar model. Notice the arm extension. That would have held the C4 explosive in place. Police then had to get it close without the suspect knowing it was there. It was positioned behind a brick wall.
This 2x4 right here is going to simulate the arm of a robot. This C4 will be attached to this arm directly against the wall right here.
We set up strategically placed cameras and built a brick wall with rebar inside to demonstrate the blast range. To give you some idea of just how powerful a pound of C4 can be, we're standing more than a football field away from that wall. And when it explodes, those fragments could be dangerous to the human body, even here. That is outside. Inside a building, Barnett says the damage to the human body would be exponentially worse.
In a closed environment, yes, a pound of C4 is a lot.
Fire in the hole! In 3, 2, 1.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the blast that killed the person, but the fragments that killed the person.
That's right, yeah. The wall becomes the lethal aspect of it.
Would go right through you, basically.
Oh, absolutely, like butter.
We took these pictures from the corner of Main and Lamar, and from that angle, none of those windows were shattered by any bomb blasts. So I guess potentially Micah was holed up on the opposite side of the building where the bomb went off. And it was the opposite side of the building where we believe Micah entered the building. This shot out door and window are on the opposite side of the building near the corner of Lamar and Elm. And we believe that is where Micah entered the building. And as you can see, just a few yards away from where we believe Micah entered the building, there's another building that appears to be connected to the main El Centro College building. And we believe that could be where the bomb was detonated. So this is the building that's connected directly to the other building that was directly across the street from the Bank of America Tower. This is still part of the El Centro Community College. And as you can see, that second floor, there's a lot of busted windows up there. So we have two theories on how those windows got broken, and we don't know which one is accurate, but either the bomb shattered those windows when it went off. If that's the case, then we have to wonder, how was Micah able to fire on the police for as long as it was said to have gone on? I'm always skeptical of also, how in the world could he have engaged them in any kind of gunfight for an extended period of time when, the snipers, the SWAT snipers that would have been on that site, and working that scene within minutes, how would he stick his head out there to aim his gun and try to, fire on anybody? I think he would have, taken him out pretty abruptly with a sniper rifle. So we met a lady at the Hofbrau Steakhouse on Sunday night, and she indicated that she heard gunfire off and on all night long up until about 11:30. It wasn't non-stop gunfire, but it was intermittent, and from time to time she'd hear gunfire all the way up to 11:30. Remember, the shooting started at 9, so that's 2.5 hours of gunfire.
In your opinion, how many rounds do you think were fired between Will Goodman and the Dallas police that night? 200 to 300 bullets.
You heard all the sounds. Yes.
Now, in that interview, it was very windy, and it was hard to make out what was said, but that guy was there that night. He was an eyewitness to it all, and he thought they fired somewhere between 200 and 300 rounds that night. So the broken glass that he shot his way into the building on the ground level with the open door is one angle that he could have used to shoot at cops. But, I've got a feeling they always called him a sniper, so he might have been on the second floor, which is where they said they killed him anyway. So I'm really having a hard time understanding how he could peer his head up above that window, get his head in the line of sight for a sniper, a SWAT sniper, which would have been on the scene definitely in under 2.5 hours, and get any shots off. I just don't understand how that story makes any sense. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Maybe there's a good explanation for it, but I don't understand it at all. And he was accurate enough to wound another 7 cops after he entered the building, is what it sounds like to me. So as far as I can tell, the only 2 windows that he would have been able to pop up, make a shot, get back down behind a wall, move over, come in from the side, make a shot, get back behind the wall. The only 2 windows he would have had the opportunity to do that from was that one and this one. And I just think the snipers would have been all over those windows. 2.5 hours of gunshot, I don't get it. For a gunfight that lasted 2.5 hours, and what one of the witnesses described as probably somewhere between 200 to 300 rounds, we're having a hard time finding that many bullet holes. We did find some bullet holes. There's definitely some down there. I would ballpark it at somewhere around maybe 30-ish is what we could find. And of course, we're not the investigators. We don't have access to the entire scene. But, for a gunfight that lasted 2.5 hours, we just don't see that much in terms of bullet holes on this property. We saw a lot on Lamar Street on those columns, but outside of that, not a whole lot. Now for another big piece of the puzzle that doesn't seem to make any sense at all, we have a broken window pane on the upstairs half of the lobby. In other words, it's not on the ground level, it's the lobby of the Bank of America Tower building across the street. The curious thing about this broken window pane is that it is on the opposite side of the building of where the shootout took place. So the shootout took place on Lamar Street between the Bank of America Tower and the El Centro College. Those pillars, we've all seen those videos. And then it kind of wrapped back around Elm Street and down that road a little bit, I guess, into where he entered the building. And then obviously we have those blown out windows even further down, but this is in the opposite direction of where all that activity took place. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what would have broken this window at all. The working theory at this point is that it could have been maybe a ricochet. So the last little thing that we thought was just a little bit strange, we were interviewing a couple of the police officers, and they were there, and I think one of them had lost a friend in that shooting on Thursday, so he seemed a little bit down. But one comment that was made when we were doing that interview, they were talking about the shootings of Baton Rouge and Minnesota that had taken place in the days leading up to this. And apparently there was a GoFundMe account for one of the, I guess, the shooting victim in Louisiana. And one of the guys was kind of focused on that. He said, yeah, his GoFundMe account is up to $700,000. He said it's just one $10,000 donation after another. And of course, if you've looked into Sandy Hook, the GoFundMe is, we believe it could be a laundering scheme. So it just struck me as a little bit odd that he would be focused on someone else's GoFundMe levels. Although both of those cops felt that both those shootings had just done absolutely no good at all for law enforcement. So that's pretty much it for this part of our investigation. If you have any advice or suggestions on where we should be looking next, we're thinking the life of Micah Xavier. Although we have seen his parents crying, it looks like authentic tears. We did see authentic tears at those wakes. And there might not be anything to this at all, and then again, this might be something. We just don't know. There's a lot of unanswered questions with this story. Thanks for watching.